The boarding announcement echoed through Terminal C at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Gate C-27. Flight 1247 to Chicago. First-class passengers welcomed aboard. Travelers rushed past with rolling suitcases and Starbucks cups clutched in their hands. For most people standing in that terminal, it was just another Tuesday afternoon. For 17-year-old Maya Thompson, it was supposed to be something more. She stood quietly near the back of the first-class line, clutching a slim black backpack against her chest. Her fingers gripped the straps so tightly that her knuckles ached. Maya wore a simple navy blue hoodie with no logo, clean white sneakers, and jeans her aunt had bought from Macy's a year before. Nothing flashy, nothing designer, just a teenage girl dressed like a teenage girl. And that, it seemed, was the problem. In her right hand, Maya held her boarding pass. The letters printed across the top still looked unreal. Seat 2A, first class. She had never flown first class before. Her mother, Denise Thompson, had always booked the cheapest seats available. First class was for other people. But this time was different. Her father had purchased a ticket and insisted on first class. When she asked him about it during their phone call last week, he simply said, "You'll be more comfortable." No further explanation. Maya had learned not to push when her father spoke that way. Caleb Thompson was not a man who did things without reason. A middle-aged couple stood in line ahead of her. The man wore a navy blazer and khaki pants. The woman carried a designer handbag. They had noticed Maya immediately. The man glanced back once, then twice. He leaned toward his wife and whispered something. The woman smirked. Maya pretended not to notice. She had learned that skill early. Her mother had taught her. In places where people already assume too much about you, the best thing you can do is keep your head down and let your actions speak. Don't give them a reason to make you into something you're not. Maya carried those words with her always. The line moved forward. Maya was now just 2 passengers away from the gate desk. The flight attendant standing behind the podium was in her late 40s, with honey blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun and a perfectly pressed uniform. Her name tag read Linda Barrett. Her smile was the kind airlines train their employees to wear. Professional, polished, completely empty. The couple ahead stepped forward. Linda scanned their passes without hesitation. "Welcome aboard. Enjoy your flight." They walked through. The woman glanced back at Maya one more time before disappearing down the jet bridge. Now it was Maya's turn. She stepped forward, boarding pass extended. Linda looked up from her tablet. Her eyes met Maya's for a brief moment, then traveled downward. They moved across Maya's hoodie, her jeans, her sneakers. They paused on the backpack, clutched against her chest. Then they returned to her face. The whole scan took less than 3 seconds, but Maya felt every millisecond. Linda's smile remained in place, but something behind it shifted. A tightness gathered at the corners of her mouth. "Sweetheart," Linda said, her voice carrying the same warmth she had offered the previous passengers, but with something else underneath. "Economy boarding will be after Zone 3. You'll need to wait over there." Maya's heart stumbled. She felt heat begin to rise in her cheeks, but she kept her expression calm. "I'm first class," she said. Her voice came out steady, though something inside her had begun to tremble. "Seat 2A. Linda raised an eyebrow. The expression was subtle, but Maya caught it. "Are you sure?" Linda asked. Behind Maya, the line had stopped moving. She could feel the attention of every passenger shifting toward her. Someone sighed loudly. Someone else muttered something under their breath. Maya extended her boarding pass further, holding it directly in front of Linda's scanner. "Yes, ma'am. I'm sure." Linda took the boarding pass. She held it for a moment, studying it as though searching for evidence of forgery. Then she scanned it. The device beeped green. Valid. Confirmed. Undeniable. Linda stared at the screen for a long moment. Her smile had faded. Her lips pressed together in a thin line. Still, she didn't move. She said slowly, drawing the sound out. "There must be some mistake." The man in the blazer, now standing at the entrance to the jet bridge, chuckled under his breath. "Figures," he said to his wife, Loud enough for Maya to hear. Loud enough for everyone to hear. Maya felt her face heat further, but she kept her voice level. "There's no mistake, ma'am. That's my seat." Linda looked at her again. The professional warmth had completely disappeared. What remained was something harder. "We'll see about that," Linda said quietly. She set Maya's boarding pass down on the podium and did not return it. The air around gate C-27 seemed to thicken. Maya stood at the podium, her boarding pass sitting on the counter between her and Linda Barrett, and she could feel the weight of every stare pressing against her back. The line behind her had grown restless. People shifted their weight. Someone checked their watch with exaggerated impatience. Linda leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. But the terminal was not loud enough to mask her words. Maya heard them clearly. So did everyone else within 10 feet. "Sweetheart, who bought this ticket for you?" The question landed like a slap. Maya swallowed. She could feel her pulse beating in her throat, but she kept her voice steady. "My father." Linda nodded slowly, as though this answer confirmed something she had already suspected. Her expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes shifted. A calculation being made, a judgment being recorded. "And where is he traveling today?" Linda asked. "He's not," Maya answered. "I'm flying alone." A beat of silence followed. It stretched between them like a wire being pulled taut. "Flying alone," Linda repeated. "At your age, in first class." It wasn't a question. It was a statement wrapped in disbelief. Maya said nothing. She had learned that sometimes silence was the only dignified response. Linda straightened and looked past Maya's shoulder, scanning the crowd until her eyes landed on someone. She raised her hand and gestured. "Ryan, can you come here for a moment?" A young gate agent emerged from behind the service desk. He was in his late 20s, with a clean-shaven face and a lanyard full of credentials hanging around his neck. His name tag read Ryan Mitchell. He walked over with an expression Maya recognized immediately, the look of someone who knew something wrong was happening but wasn't sure whether to intervene. "What's the issue?" Ryan asked, his voice carefully neutral. Linda picked up Maya's boarding pass and handed it to him. "Can you verify this passenger? I don't want to seat someone in first class who doesn't belong there." The word belong echoed through Maya's chest like a stone dropped into deep water. It wasn't just about a seat. It wasn't just about a ticket. It was about her, about who she was, about what Linda Barrett had decided she was the moment she saw her. Ryan took the boarding pass and scanned it with his own device. The beep came immediately. "Green. Valid. It's valid," he said quietly, looking up at Linda. "Everything checks out." Linda frowned. Her jaw tightened. She took the boarding pass back from Ryan, but still did not return to Maya. "We've had issues," Linda said, her voice carrying manufactured patience, "with seat upgrades being misused. I'm sure you understand. We have to be careful about who we seat in premium cabins." Maya's hands trembled at her sides, but she kept them still. She kept her voice calm. "I didn't misuse anything. My father bought this ticket. It's mine." Linda sighed. The sound was theatrical, heavy with implication. "Let's not make a scene." But the scene had already been made, and Linda had made it. Around them, phones had begun to tilt. Maya caught glimpses of screens angling in her direction. Small red lights blinked at the corners of cameras. People were recording without intervening, without speaking up, without saying a single word in her defense. The silent witnesses. Finally, Linda handed Maya's boarding pass back. "Fine," she said, voice clipped and cold. "But don't be surprised if there are further questions once you're on board." Maya took her boarding pass. She didn't say thank you. She simply walked forward onto the jet bridge. The walk felt endless. She could feel the eyes of the passengers behind her burning into her back. She could hear their whispers. "Can you believe that? Where are her parents? Someone should check her bag." Maya kept walking. She didn't turn around. When she reached the aircraft and entered the first-class cabin, the reactions continued. The woman across the aisle clutched her purse tighter, pulling it closer to her body. The man in 2B, the seat beside her, looked at her with barely concealed irritation. He shook his head slowly. Behind her, someone whispered, "Unreal. They'll let anyone into first class now." Maya found her seat. Row 2, window side. 2A. She slid into the leather cushion and placed her backpack beneath the seat in front of her. She stared out the window at the runway. Her eyes burned, but she refused to let the tears fall. Not here. Not in front of these people. 10 minutes passed. The cabin began to fill. The immediate attention had shifted. Maya allowed herself to relax slightly. Maybe it was over. Then Linda Barrett appeared at the front of the cabin. She was not alone. Beside her stood a tall man in a dark suit with a badge clipped to his belt. His expression was stern, his posture rigid. Air Marshal, Officer Mark Collins. Linda pointed toward row 2, toward Maya. Collins walked down the aisle. He stopped beside Maya's seat and looked down at her. "Miss," he said, his voice low but firm, "we need you to come with us." Maya's heart dropped into her stomach. "Why?" "There's been a concern raised about your ticket and your behavior." "My behavior?" Her voice cracked despite her efforts to control it. "What behavior?" Behind her, passengers leaned into the aisle to watch. Someone whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "I knew it." Linda stood at the front of the cabin, arms crossed, watching with grim satisfaction. Maya looked at Officer Collins. She looked at Linda. She looked at the passengers watching her with suspicion and judgment. "I didn't do anything," she said. Officer Collins' expression didn't change. "Let's handle this quietly. Please come with me." Maya stood slowly. Her hands were shaking visibly now. She picked up her backpack and stepped into the aisle. The walk back to the first-class cabin felt like walking through fire. The woman who had clutched her purse looked away. The man in 2B shook his head again. Someone muttered, "Probably a scam." Another voice, "They let anyone into first class now. This is what happens." Each word landed like a blow. Each whisper cut like a blade. Maya kept walking. She kept her head up. She kept putting one foot in front of the other. But her vision had begun to blur at the edges. Tears she had been fighting so hard contained were winning. They reached the aircraft door. Officer Collins stepped aside to allow Maya to exit first. She walked through the door and onto the jet bridge. They stopped just outside the aircraft. Maya stood there, trembling, humiliated, confused, and completely alone. This was it, she thought. This was how it ended. Escorted off a plane like a criminal. Accused of something she hadn't done. Judged for something she couldn't change. Everything felt hopeless. Everything felt over. Maya stood in the jet bridge. The aircraft door closed behind her. The silence was oppressive. Officer Collins stood to her left, his hand resting near his belt. Linda Barrett stood a few feet away, arms crossed. The narrow corridor felt like a trap. "I need to see your identification," Officer Collins said. Maya reached into her backpack with trembling fingers. She retrieved her state ID and handed it to him. He examined it carefully, comparing the photo to her face. "The ticket is valid," he said. "The ID matches the booking." Linda's jaw tightened. "There's something off about this. I've been doing this job for 23 years. I know when something doesn't add up." Maya wanted to scream. She wanted to demand to know what exactly didn't add up. Her skin? Her clothes? The fact that she was young and black and alone in first class? But she stayed silent. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "Don't give them a reason." Officer Collins looked at Maya. "Is there anyone we can contact? A parent? A guardian?" "My father bought the ticket," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's a home. I'm flying to see my grandmother in Chicago." Linda scoffed. "Convenient." Something inside Maya cracked. A small fissure in the wall she had built around herself. She turned to look directly at Linda Barrett. "Ma'am," Maya said, and her voice was steady now, steady with something that felt dangerous. "I have done nothing wrong. I answered your questions. I showed my ID. My ticket has been scanned and validated 3 times. What exactly do you want from me?" Linda opened her mouth to respond. She never got the chance. Every screen in the terminal flickered. Maya saw it through the windows of the jet bridge, the departure boards, the flight information displays. The monitors at every gate. All of them flickered simultaneously. Then they went black. For a moment, nothing happened. The world held its breath. Then the lights in the jet bridge dimmed. Not completely, but enough to notice. A low alarm began to sound. Once, twice, a steady pulse that resonated through the walls. Officer Collins straightened. His hand moved instinctively toward his radio. Over the terminal's intercom system, a voice spoke. Calm but tense. Attention, all personnel. Initiate Level 4 operational hold. Suspend all departures immediately. Repeat, suspend all departures immediately. All passengers are to remain in their current locations until further notice. Maya's heart stopped. Level 4. She didn't know exactly what that meant, but she knew it was significant. Airports didn't shut down without reason. Officer Collins grabbed his radio and pressed a button. Control, this is Collins on Jet Bridge C-27. What's the situation? Static crackled. Then a voice responded. All units hold position. Federal Operations Command is taking control of the terminal. Stand by for further instructions. Federal Operations Command. Linda's face drained of color. She looked at Officer Collins, then at Maya, then back at the terminal windows. What the hell is happening? She whispered. No one answered. Through the jet bridge windows, Maya could see the terminal transforming. Baggage belts ground to a halt. Jet bridges locked in place. Red lights blinking. Passengers who had been walking freely now stood frozen, looking around in confusion. And then she saw them, men and women in dark suits moving through the terminal with purpose. Not TSA, not airport police. Something different. Something that carried a weight of authority Maya had never witnessed before. They moved like a wave, spreading out through the gates, the corridors, the service areas. Maya's phone vibrated in her pocket. She reached for it slowly, hands still trembling. Officer Collins watched, but didn't stop her. One text message. From Dad. 3 words. Stay exactly where you are. Maya stared at the screen. Around her, the airport had frozen, one of the largest transportation hubs in the United States, serving hundreds of thousands of passengers every day, had come to a complete standstill. Planes sat motionless on the tarmac. Thousands of travelers stood stranded in terminals. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a 17-year-old girl held her phone in trembling hands and wondered what her father had done. Linda Barrett looked at Maya with an expression that had shifted from suspicion to fear. "Who are you?" she asked. Maya didn't answer. She didn't know anymore. Within 3 minutes of the lockdown announcement, the terminal had transformed into something unrecognizable. The casual chaos of a busy airport had been replaced by controlled stillness. Passengers stood in clusters, speaking in hushed voices. Maya remained on the jet bridge with Officer Collins and Linda Barrett. None of them moved. None of them spoke. Through the windows, Maya watched as more dark-suited figures moved through the terminal. They carried themselves with authority that didn't need to announce itself. Then one figure broke away from the group and began walking directly toward Gate C-27. A woman, late 50s, with silver hair cut short and sharp. She wore a dark blazer over white blouse, and a badge hung from a lanyard around her neck. Department of Transportation. The woman reached the jet bridge entrance and walked through without pausing. Officer Collins straightened. "Ma'am, this area is—" The woman held up her hand, and Collins fell silent immediately. She stopped in front of Linda Barrett. "Are you Linda Barrett?" the woman asked. Her voice was calm, but there was iron beneath the surface. Linda's face had gone white. Yes, I'm Linda Barrett." The woman nodded once. "You are relieved of duty. Effective immediately." Linda's mouth opened. No words came out. "What is this about?" Linda finally managed. "I haven't done anything. I was just following protocol. This girl, she—" "Miss Barrett," the woman interrupted, "I strongly advise you to stop speaking." 2 agents appeared at the jet bridge entrance. They walked forward and positioned themselves on either side of Linda. "You will come with us," one of them said. Linda looked at Maya one last time. Her expression was no longer superior or suspicious. It was fear, confusion. the dawning realization that the ground beneath her had completely shifted. The agents led her away. The silver-haired woman turned to face Maya. Her expression softened immediately. "Miss Thompson," she said, and there was something almost gentle in her voice. "Are you all right?" Maya nodded slowly, though she wasn't sure if it was true. Officer Collins stepped forward. "Ma'am, with respect, who is this girl? What's happening here?" The woman didn't answer him. Instead, she spoke into an earpiece. "We confirmed the subject. Terminal C, Gate 27, Initiate Phase 2. Moving at the end of the jet bridge caught Maya's attention. A man was walking toward them. He moved without hurry, each step deliberate and measured. Other agents parted to let him pass without being asked. His presence seemed to create space around him. He wore a charcoal gray suit with no tie. His shoes were polished but practical. His face was calm, composed, completely unreadable. But Maya would recognize that face anywhere. Caleb Thompson. Her father. The silver-haired woman stepped aside as he approached. "Mr. Thompson," she said, nodding in greeting. Caleb didn't acknowledge her. His eyes were fixed on his daughter. He stopped in front of Maya and looked at her with an expression she had never seen before. Something that carried the weight of 100 sleepless nights. "Did they touch you?" he asked quietly. Maya shook her head. "No." He exhaled slowly. The tension in his shoulders released slightly. Then he turned to face the space where Linda Barrett had stood moments ago. Officer Collins was still there, watching with wide eyes. Other airline personnel had gathered at the jet bridge entrance. "You accuse my daughter of not belonging," Caleb said. His voice was even. He didn't raise it. He didn't need to. "You question her right to occupy a seat she had lawfully purchased. You subjected her to public humiliation in front of dozens of passengers. You call for a federal air marshal to escort her off the aircraft, all because you looked at her and decided she couldn't possibly be in the right place." He paused, letting the words settle. "For the past 6 months," Caleb continued, "I have been leading a federal audit on discriminatory practices in major U.S. transportation hubs. My team has documented hundreds of incidents. Passengers singled out for additional screening based on their appearance. Travelers questioned about their right to occupy premium cabins. The terminal was silent. Every person within earshot had stopped moving, stopped speaking, stopped breathing. This flight," Caleb said, "was a test." Maya's breath caught. She looked at her father, suddenly understanding. The first-class ticket, the insistence that she travel alone, the lack of explanation. He had known what might happen, and he had sent her anyway. Caleb looked at his daughter. His voice softened. "You passed," he said. "You maintained your dignity. You answered every question with honesty and respect. You did exactly what I hoped you would do." He turned to face the gathered crowd. "They didn't pass. They failed, and the whole world is going to know about it." The silver-haired woman stepped forward. "Mr. Thompson is correct. Over the course of this investigation, we have uncovered evidence of systematic discrimination embedded in airline training materials and company policies. Internal memos discussing passenger profiling. Instructions on how to identify travelers who don't fit the profile of premium cabin customers." A man in an airline executive uniform pushed forward. His face was pale, his forehead slick with sweat. "Mr. Thompson," he said, his voice trembling, "I want you to know that this airline takes diversity and inclusion seriously. We had no idea your daughter was involved. If we had known." Caleb turned to face him. His expression didn't change. "She wasn't involved," Caleb said. "That's the point." The executive blinked. "I don't understand. My daughter is not a civil rights activist. She's not a plant. She's a 17-year-old girl who wanted to fly to Chicago to see her grandmother. That's all she was. And you failed her. Your staff failed her. Your policies failed her." Caleb stepped closer to the executive. The hotel room was quiet. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, looking out the floor-to-ceiling window at downtown Atlanta. The city spread out before her, thousands of lights flickering in the darkness. Somewhere below, sirens wailed and faded. Planes circled overhead, still unable to land at an airport that remained partially locked down. Her phone lay on the bedside table, Screen down. She had turned off notifications an hour ago, overwhelmed by the flood of alerts. Her name was everywhere. Her face was everywhere. Strangers on the internet had made her into a symbol before she even understood what had happened. A soft knock at the connecting door made her look up. Caleb entered slowly. He had changed out his suit into more casual clothes, but the weight of the day was visible on his face. Lines she had never noticed before seemed deeper around his eyes. "How are you doing?" he asked. Maya didn't answer immediately. "Did you know?" she finally asked. "When you bought that ticket, when you told me to fly first class alone, did you know this was going to happen?" Caleb walked over and sat in the chair across from her bed. "I knew it might happen," he said. "I hoped it wouldn't. I hoped that maybe you would have a normal flight, that maybe things had changed." He paused, but I suspected the patterns were too consistent. Too many incidents at too many airports. Young black travelers in premium cabins. Questioned, challenged, sometimes removed. Almost always humiliated. So, yes, I suspected that if I sent you through that system alone, something might happen. Maya felt something rise in her chest. Anger, maybe, or hurt. "And you sent me anyway," she said. "I did." "You used me." Caleb shook his head slowly. "I trusted you." "That's not the same thing." "Isn't it?" Caleb leaned forward. "Maya, I could have sent anyone. A trained observer. Someone who knew exactly what was happening. But that's not what I needed. I needed truth. Someone who would react naturally. Someone who would face that moment with nothing but their own character to guide them." He reached out and took her hand. "I trusted that you would handle it with dignity. I trusted that you wouldn't lose yourself in the anger. I trusted that you would be exactly who your mother and I raised you to be." Maya blinked hard. Tears she had been holding back finally began to fall. "It hurt, Dad," she whispered, standing there while she looked at me like I was nothing, while everyone watched, while they whispered and recorded, and nobody said a word to help me. "It hurt so much." Caleb moved to sit beside her on the bed. He put his arm around her shoulders. "I know," he said, "and I'm sorry you had to feel that. I'm sorry any child ever has to feel that. That's why we're doing this. Because the hurt you felt today, people feel that every single day. They feel it in airports and restaurants and offices and schools. And most of the time, nobody shuts down the airport for them. They just have to carry it. Alone." Maya leaned into her father's shoulder. "You didn't just experience something today," Caleb said quietly. "You exposed something. Your dignity under pressure became the evidence. You didn't have to fight back. You didn't have to prove anything. You just had to stand there and be yourself." They sat together in silence for a long moment. "What happens now?" Maya finally asked. "Now the real work begins. Hearings, investigations, lawsuits, policy changes. It's going to take years." "And me?" Caleb pulled back slightly to look at her. "You go back to being Maya. You finish high school. You apply to colleges. You live your life. What happened today was important, but it doesn't have to define you. You define you." Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Maya stared at the screen. Unknown number. Something made her open the message. One line of text. "You don't know who you interrupted today." Maya's blood went cold. Caleb noticed her expression shift. "What is it?" Maya handed him the phone. He read the message. His expression didn't change, but she saw his jaw tighten. "Who sent this?" she asked. Caleb was already pulling out his own phone, dialing a number. "This is Thompson. I need a trace on a message sent to my daughter's phone. Unknown number. Within the last 2 minutes." He ended the call and looked at Maya. "Dad," she said, voice trembling. "Who was that? What did they mean?" Caleb put his hand on her shoulder. "The investigation we launched today threatened a lot of people, not just the airline employees. There are people higher up, people with financial interests, political connections, people who have spent decades building systems that benefit them." He walked to the window. "When you shut down an airport, you disrupt supply chains, business deals. You cost people money. And when you cost certain people money, they pay attention. Maya felt fear spreading through her chest. Are we in danger? Caleb turned to face her. You're safe. We have federal protection. They're trying to intimidate us, to make us afraid. He walked back and knelt, so they were at eye level. But we can't stop now. The evidence is already public. The investigation is in motion. Their threats prove we're onto something they desperately want to hide. Maya thought about the day she had survived, the humiliation, the whispers, the silence of people who could have helped. And she thought about all the people who face that every day without anyone to fight for them. Okay, she said quietly. We keep going. Caleb smiled. The first real smile she had seen from him all day. That's my daughter. After her father left, Maya walked to the window and looked out at Atlanta. High above the city, a plane circled in the darkness, still waiting for clearance to land. Her phone lay on the bed behind her. The threatening message still glowed on the screen. She didn't know who had sent it. She didn't know what they were capable of. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She had stood in the middle of the storm today and refused to break. Whatever came next, she would face it the same way, with dignity, with courage, with the quiet strength her mother had taught her and her father had trusted. Maya Thompson looked out at the city lights and took a slow, deep breath. The fight was just beginning, but she was ready. Do you think Maya should have been told beforehand? Or did her father do the right thing by trusting her without warning? And the question everyone wants answered, who sent that message?